Jai Shri Ram. I am Krupashankar here, your verbal and AVA coach for the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination. Okay, now this is one of the 300 plus issue prompts. An issue prompt is an essay topic. You could be having to write an essay on this. This could be the topic staring at you. And within the AVA component, which is the first part of the GRE test, the issue task is the first one. In the test, actually, the first 10 minutes are for your biographical information, after which there is a minute break and then 10 minutes are for the tutorial. So after 1 more minute break, and so after 22 minutes, you will actually start having to deal with the AVA issue task. And this is the one. Now just look at this topic. Out of the 300, you get 1, you have 6 grade points. And then there's no stipulation on how many words you must write. You will have to analyze it thoroughly. They have a rubric, like I already said. I will quickly discuss that rubric again. A rubric, by the way, is an assessment criteria. The word rubric has many meanings. Rubric can also mean the title. Under the rubric of Indian history. So rubric also means rules to follow. So there are 3 meanings now broadly that is sufficient. In fact, remember, a word in English has many meanings. But what we need to know is what are the popular ones and what are the ones that are currently in use. So therefore, do not go anywhere here and there for your coaching. Come to me, come to Krupa. I've been doing this for the last 23 years and I've put in a lot of efforts. And I take pride in my work. I have a great passion for this. So please attend my classes. You will save money and time too. And you will not regret having come to me. So now let's get off. So GODAV is the mnemonic I've created for you to remember the assessment criteria. G for grammar. Grammar, obviously your sentences must be grammatically correct. O for organization, organized response, which means there must be a clear introduction, a clear conclusion, and the body of the response running into 4 or 5 small paragraphs. And each paragraph must also be organized. I recommend the PREP formula. Point, reason, example, point again, which means, for example, suppose I start the paragraph with, let's examine why A is good for health. So now we have made the point. Now let us give some reasons. A is good for health because A contains element of P. And I'll write maybe another sentence. And then A was administered to a group of people who were suffering from a particular condition and their condition improved, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, and finally the last sentence is therefore, in the light of the above examples and reasons, it becomes clear that A is definitely good for health for people who are suffering this condition. So now I've finished a paragraph which fits perfectly into that point, reasons, examples, and point again. So if you can write like this, that is called programmed writing and structured writing. So if you can write like this, you will get a higher score. So please start writing. Most students are very complacent. COMPLACENT. Complacent simply would mean lazy, self-satisfied, not willing to do anything extra. Because they feel that they're already smart enough, they know they can speak good English and they can do it. No, sorry. Even if you are a good speaker of English, writing is a much more challenging task. Therefore, you must write, you must practice, and I am offering you help. You write your response and send it on WhatsApp to me. My WhatsApp number is 891-906-9803. I will definitely give you an audio feedback file. So actually AVA you can do on your own if you can simply watch my YouTube videos, which are all free. I have loaded more than 255 now, and every day I keep uploading. So please watch that. Actually, my YouTube videos are sufficient for you to practice vocabulary and AVA. Actually, what you need in the form of coaching is how to deal with the entire verbal section, for which there is no other option but to attend coaching classes. and mine will simply be the best because you are already practicing listening to my videos on YouTube. Your job will become that much more easier. So now, most people, GO, organized response. D is details. Details means examples and reasons. There must be a good number of reasons, and examples can be drawn from religion, politics, sports, culture, psychology, and science. I'll leave it to you. So if you can throw a few examples from different disciplines, you will get a better score. And GODA, alpha, A stands for addressing the topic, which means you must give the reader the feel that you are writing on what you have been asked to write on. You know, we all have had the situation in school when there was a question and we wrote something very confidently, but the teacher pulled us up and told us that you were asked something else and you wrote something else. So you get a big 0. So addressing the topic is an important criterion, which means you must take sufficient care to understand what's being asked and write only on that, not on something which is far-fetched, irrelevant, extraneous. Extraneous means irrelevant. Far-fetched means too imaginative and therefore irrelevant. So you should not make that mistake. Then, even if you write very well, but if the reader feels that that was not what was asked of you, then you get a big 0. And then the last one is V, vocabulary, which means you must be in a position to use some good words, select words. So at least take 10 or 15, practice them nicely. I will give you suggestions even for that, so that you can confidently use them without making any mistakes. You must know collocations. When you are using words, there's a concept you must be familiar with. Collocation, COLLOCATION. Collocation, what goes with what? Which means not all adjectives are suitable for all nouns. So for example, you can say strong wind and heavy rain, but you can't say heavy wind and maybe you can say strong rain. No, I don't know, I doubt so. You can say light rain and light wind, but not strong wind. Okay, strong winds, perhaps. So collective nouns are also there. What is the preposition? Preposition which follows. For example, if you choose the wrong preposition, then the sentence will be grammatically wrong. And incidentally, prepositions are the toughest part of English grammar. So you need to understand collocations. Therefore, I am strongly recommending that you practice at least 10 to 15 words thoroughly. Look up all the collocations. And in fact, good writing is a useful skill which will help you even in your career later on. So now let's look at this topic. So I'm just refreshing again. GODAV, grammar, organized response, details, addressing the topic, and V for vocabulary. This is the assessment criteria. This is the rubric the professor will follow while evaluating your response. And so if you meet all those criteria, you should easily get 4 out of the 6 grade points. And that's a good score. Now let's look at this topic. Most people prefer restrictions and regulations to absolute freedom of choice, although they would probably deny such a preference. So I'm sure the average student will have a serious difficulty understanding what the hell this is all about. So please remember, always use the simple set of 6 honest men. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Who are the people who are likely to do this kind of a thing? That means they prefer one thing, but they deny such a preference. So what are the people what are the people called? Who would prefer something but deny their preference? The word is hypocrite. Hypocrites. Preach but don't practice. Prefer one thing but deny that preference. So that's a hypocrite. But in this case, is it all right? In other words, would it be perfectly right and justified for somebody to prefer certain things but actually deny them? And what could be the reasons justifying such a denial? Now, so who, what, where, when, why, how is a set of questions you can raise in your mind and try answering that when you are trying to write a response. Now, you must first ask yourself, do you prefer restrictions and regulations? Yeah, most of us would probably say yes, obviously. If you give absolute freedom, people will violate other people's freedom. They will commit crimes with impunity. IMPUNITY. Impunity means exemption from punishment. Exemption from punishment. Puny is the root word. Puny means punishment. Punitive means punishing. So I think the average person would say, yes, restrictions and regulations are necessary, and absolute freedom of choice is not definitely preferable, for the simple reason that people will take law into their hands, and we already have enough problems in society, so people will commit crimes with impunity, and many innocent victims will have to bear the brunt. BRUNT. The word brunt means the full force of something, especially something negative. So, but then, now ask yourself the next question. If a TV anchor, or let us say a reporter, comes with a mic to you and asks you, do you deny this? First he asks you, do you prefer? And you have said yes. And would you deny this preference? Or let us say the person simply asks you, do you prefer absolute restrictions and regulations, or absolute freedom of choice? Now actually our situation is we prefer those regulations and restrictions. But now that a TV reporter has come and you are now on national TV, would you accept, would you affirm, would you assert your preference, or deny it? And then say, no, I am a devotee of freedom of choice, I worship freedom, because after all, what exactly is the purpose of human life? What is the march of human history all about? The march of human history is all about freedom, and we are still fighting. There are many freedoms which we have only on paper. There is no actual freedom. You might sound like a great philosopher, and then you might find many friends also, because they would think that you are a very nice person to be with, or perhaps work under. If you are an employer and you are running a company, if you are going to talk like this, that listen, if you join my company, we are going to put you through a lot of rules and restrictions, and you better be ready. And if you start talking like that, do you think anybody will join your company? No. So here is a wonderful example. Now, you have to choose. If you are an employer, then you would probably say that you give a lot of freedom to your employees, and there is absolute freedom and all that. Nice, wonderful things which people love to hear. Now, just in case if you say all this and you get a lot of recruits, and then they realize that it's almost like an army cantonment. There are a lot of rules and regulations. People have to come on time. If they come late 5 minutes, they lose half a day's pay. And if they come late by 10 minutes, they lose the whole day's pay. And if they prefer not to work because they have anyway lost the pay for that day, then they fall back on their seniority and promotions. So there are a whole lot of negative consequences of coming late. I'm just giving a sample. So, and there are break times. If people exceed the break times, again, there could be some punitive measures. So, in a company which wants to be a world leader, a multinational company which has invested heavily and so many shareholders are there worldwide, now you cannot have something like a group of hippies, all those flower children. You're not a hippie group, right? You're not a group of junkies. You have to be a disciplined group. Now, if some people find this very difficult and then they complain that they were cheated, they were promised absolute freedom of choice, but here they're facing so many regulations, you can always defend it on the grounds that those who produce good output, are highly productive and follow restrictions and regulations, they do have a lot of freedom. And you can show that. You can probably most multinationals do have these days an in-house bar where not all are invited. Only those recruits who have the emotional maturity not to misbehave and not to abuse their freedom. So these are innumerable examples you can go on giving. So many young people, they would probably misuse the funds. So they would do all kinds of petty things which definitely are not good for the company. So now the employer may want to retain you because you are talented, but he will not give you freedom because you're not mature enough to handle freedom in the first place. Immature people abuse freedom. So you can probably write a couple of paragraphs saying that, yeah, in the introduction, most people prefer restrictions and regulations, but they would deny this preference because they want to be viewed in a positive light, and this kind of a hypocrisy is quite common. Full stop. However, we must also understand that an employer or a politician would speak in similar tones, but then impose a lot of restrictions because he would have to create a disciplined team in order to win elections or achieve something worthwhile, even in a sports team for that matter. Freedom of choice is given, but then not to all, not to those people who are likely to abuse that freedom. So you can now write, I think I've given you sufficient ideas. Well, the one paragraph you can write about those people who are outright hypocrites, and when they do this, they will get caught, and then they will have to face the music. So that's also possible, right? So most people prefer restrictions and regulations to absolute freedom of choice, although they would probably deny. The opposite example is, there are some people who affirm and assert what they prefer. So that's also one group, right? I could be a sports coach or a music coach. I could be teaching some musical instrument, and I could openly be saying that, listen, you come to me, I'm going to impose a lot of restrictions because I'm a tough coach. I'll give you a tough love, okay, a tough parent, right? That's also tough love parents. So that's another good example. So I could be a coach who can openly say that, no, we are not going to let you do whatever you want. So if you want to be a good singer, whatever. So I think you got the example. A good cricketer, good baseball player, he might be a tough coach. You've seen many movies where coaches are extremely tough, and initially the recruits may get frustrated, they may want to leave, but eventually they become world champions, and then they thank their coach for the coaching, right? So that's another good example. There are some people who prefer some things and will affirm that. It could be restrictions that they prefer, it could be absolute freedom that they prefer. So all kinds of people are there. But the question is, what do most people do? Well, I think the speaker is right. Most people want to be viewed in a popular, positive light, and therefore this group would include teachers, parents to begin with. If your parents are interviewed, they would probably say, hey, I treat my kids like my friends. After all, they are grown-ups. But then, there is like a tin pot, a petty dictator at home. So all these are good examples. Now I think I've given you sufficient material to write a nice response. Please do write a good response. Try to include as many perspectives as possible. But writing, talking is easy. Putting this down into writing takes a serious effort. And unless you practice writing thoroughly, you will not get a good score in AVA. And writing is a very useful skill. In fact, writing is the sine qua non of career progression. Sine qua non, SINEQUANON. Sine qua non means absolutely indispensable requirement, without which nothing can be done. So improve your writing and send your response. I'll be glad to give you feedback. Bolo Jai Shri Ram.